The climb to the top feels so good once you get there, but it can also feel lonely at the top, especially when you're successful. Today, a behind the scenes look at a podcast by women who say they've learned a few things along the journey, and now they're sharing stories to help empower others. It's a special crossover episode with the Think Tank of Three podcast. Expert Connections starts now. In a world of super competitiveness and polarization, the Think Tank of Three podcast brings together women from different backgrounds to share stories to empower others. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. Today, we have a special crossover episode with my other show, the Think Tank of Three podcast. Join me in welcoming my co-host and expert guest today, Reischea Canidate-Kapasouris. Hey, Reish.
Hey, Jules, how you doing?
Good, little different backgrounds, same studio,
Yes.
but different studio, behind the scenes.
Prince stays with me no matter where I go.
I know, and you know what? I feel like a little bit later we're gonna give the story behind your background, because even our own Think Tank of Three guests don't, or our guests hear the story, but our listeners never hear the story behind your background. But before we get into that, this is so fun. I get to turn the mic around today on you to talk about my other show. Our Expert Connections audience is used to talking about all things business, startups, AI, you name it. Today, we're talking about the Think Tank of Three podcast and the other show that I do that's more geared towards women. So I want to start with this because, launched this podcast 5 years ago. I had to look it up today. It's been 5 years since the podcast launched. Prior to that, we did 2 years of blogging. So this has been a passion project, 7 years in the making, which is crazy. But the interesting thing is we've always said that the Think Tank of Three is a platform for us to be able to encourage, support, and have conversations with other women along this journey, women who want to go to the next level. But we've had a lot of conversations behind the scenes about what next level even means. So let's start there. Reish, what does next level mean to you?
Wow, there are so many different ways to answer that question, because there's a person of me now who understands that next level to me 20 years ago is a completely different version of next level to me now. So for me, next level is just finding that place, finding that, for lack of a better term, sweet spot where you are comfortable in your skin, you recognize what you're doing and where you're at, and you don't feel guilty or less than because it may not look the way you thought it was supposed to look. That sounds great. I'd love to say I'm 100% there. I'm
Well, that's the
still
whole point of
working,
the podcast,
right?
right?
And I'm still working on it. But that to me is next level. It's not, oh, I'm raking in my 7-digit salary or my high 6-digit salary and I've got everything. No, it's deeper than that. It's feeling success in your life. And that, sure, that might have a monetary attachment to it, but chances are not necessarily. So for me, it really is recognizing that there are certain things I want the ability to do that, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of an extra salary to get there, having a family and wanting to combine resources and make things a little bit easier. But mainly it's recognizing that my vision of what I was going to be and who I was going to be today is so much different versus who I thought that person was going to be 20 plus years ago. And
And 20 years
I'm
from now,
getting
it'll
better with
change
that.
too, right?
And
Like
it'll
it just
change again.
continues to change.
And it's probably going to change again. And I am okay with who I am now, depending on the day. You ask me on certain days and it's just like, oh, it's just not. what I signed up for.
Well, I think that's also one of the reasons behind why this podcast even launched in the first place. It's
Yes.
recognizing that we are striving for more, however we define that. It might be more in life, more in career, more balance, more of something or something different. It's continuing the journey of change, but also being able to embrace where we are right here, right now in the present, and recognizing the things that we don't like in our lives that we want to improve, and then capturing that, hopefully, through the stories of other women. One of the things that I think has been so interesting throughout the journey of this podcast is that, early on, we would say that we interview successful women who've made it. And the funny thing about that is, we would reach out and we would connect with successful women who've made it in their careers. And they would reflect back to us that they're still on the journey. They haven't made it anywhere. And so it's so interesting to me. It's fascinating that even from the outside, even from the makers of this podcast, who are kind of preaching from the rooftops that this is an ongoing journey, that would be reflected back to us. We wouldn't have a single guest on our roster if
Right.
we only went for women who think they've made it.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, you look at, Mika Wierzynski from MSNBC and the whole platform that she began of women 50 over 50, the top 50 over 50 women. And they are very specific. It's not, I'm 49 and a half, I'm 47. It's, you have to be at the very least 50 when when you put in your application for whatever it is, the situation with that group, or older. And she gets so excited about the women who are 60, the women who are 70, the women who are 80, who have had complete, life-changing turnarounds, or the women who literally started a completely different journey that they never anticipated. Oh, and by the way, they're 65. So that's the thing, like you had said just a moment ago about, I'm probably going to be looking at it differently again in another 20 years. So understanding that that's a part of that journey is bottom line, you learn more as you get older. You have learned. If you haven't, then
Life experience.
something's wrong. Life experience teaches you stuff, and you recognize, maybe I'll try this using these experiences that I've had in the past to try to make this work differently. And I think that really does matter.
It does. And there's value, of course, when you're younger and having a fresh set of eyes and fresh perspective. And I think it's so important.
Energy.
The energy I
Energy.
know that I'm constantly searching for. It's important on our show that we also reflect that back in the guests that we have. So we have the full range of guests, younger to older, because everyone brings something different to the table. And it's being able to recognize what you bring at different phases of your life that I think is so important. And Reischea, for those who have not met you yet on the Think Tank of Three, which, by the way, go over, subscribe, meet Reischea, check out the Think Tank of Three podcast. But for those who haven't met you yet, tell us about your background. You have a very impressive history in sports broadcasting.
Thank you. Yeah, so I started off, it's funny, I fell into sports broadcasting. I originally wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. That's where it all began. I went to University of Southern California. That was my plan. I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I even went really shooting for the moon and decided, oh, and I'm going to be the team doctor for my San Francisco 49ers. That was my plan. And then I ran into molecular biology, and then that whole plan just sort of fell apart. So let's fast forward. I graduate from USC after having co-hosted an awards sports banquet with a fellow track teammate of mine at USC. It hit me that night. Sports broadcasting, that's what I want to do. And so I literally fell into it. So here's that first rethinking, that new thought. High school girl going into college really knew that she was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, really knew that at the very least she was going into the medical field. Just 4 years from there, realized, no, I'm not going into the medical field, because that's not my makeup. I wish it were my makeup, but that's not my makeup. What is my makeup? And it turned out that television was a thing that I really enjoyed, I really wanted to do, and I had never even given it a hint of a thought until I fell into it. After graduating, I went into an internship at a local station in my hometown. And from there, things just kind of fell into place. They hired me on within a year, I want to say, to be the weekend sports anchor, part-time sports producer. And then I got a job as the weekend sports anchor, weekday sports reporter in San Diego at a startup channel there. From there, I got the dream job in New York City at the Fox affiliate in New York City. And then from there, that ultimate goal, once you get into sports broadcasting, is of course you want to go to ESPN. I got to ESPN and I was there for 4 years. And then I didn't enjoy it anymore. It was not the so-called dream job, the so-called dream space when I got there. And after being there, I realized this is not the dream space. I'm not happy. I wasn't happy doing that, which shocked me. So now what? And that was figuring out those next steps. And granted, there were some things in there as well. Got married, my children, there were some things going on early on with my son that we needed to figure out. So, another change of pace. I still enjoyed being in front of the camera though. And I really, really missed that and was trying to find a way to get back into that. And then I met you and the
And here
Think
we
Tank of
are.
Three podcast. And so now I'm fulfilling the thing that I still enjoy, which is being in front of the camera and having conversations. But it's not the way I thought it was going to be. See how I did that?
And isn't that the lesson in life? I mean, Reish, we share to some degree the background in broadcasting. I, from fifth grade, walking around in my mom's high heels and trench coat, reporting on the news from our front yard. And so, Jane Pauley was my idol. So from fifth grade, I knew I wanted to be Jane Pauley. I was going to be on Dateline. I was going to be reporting the news. I thought that was just the coolest job ever. Fast forward, in college, I discovered that I was really good at telling other people what to do, not just the storytelling part. So I discovered the world of producing and went on to spend, about 12 years working as a producer and executive producer in TV news, never on camera, actually. This was not my comfort zone, still isn't most of the time, but it's fun. But then I always knew that I would do it for a time. I always felt like there's so much time, like there's so many different things in life that we can do. Why would we spend all of our time doing one thing? And so I didn't know what I was going to want to do. But when that burnout started setting in, that 24/7 pressure cooker lifestyle, you lived it. I knew I needed to make a change and I wasn't sure what. And so it's just really interesting. So many people, not just women, so many people go through this, whether they act on it or not. We talk about that on the show. It might be a generational difference that has younger people more willing to change careers throughout their lifetime. I mean, here I am now with a podcast, a YouTube show. I run a marketing agency. I wear a number of hats. And I love it. There's, and I never would have imagined, as, fifth grader Julie walking around in her mom's high heels, I never would have imagined that I'd become an entrepreneur helping other entrepreneurs. Exactly. So that, I think, is the theme of the Think Tank of Three. If that resonates to you, watch our show. We are going to be kicking off a brand new season.
Yes.
And I think this is our first time revealing it's a brand new season with just 2 co-hosts instead of 3. So that will be revealed in the show. And really because of exactly what we talk about on the show, life changing, priorities changing. And no matter how much our beautiful and vibrant and amazing co-host, Audrey, I think no matter how much she loves the show, it can be hard sometimes to make the decision to step away from something that may not be serving our life in the way that we need it to. Exactly. And so excited to be talking about that as we get into our season. Reish, I'm curious. I want to give a little sneak peek ahead at the show itself. We've had some really incredible guests throughout the years, from high-powered women sharing life-changing stories to, kind of the women we think are the women next door, changing equally powerful stories. What has been a story that's really stood out to you? What's it, what's one of our guests that has made a difference in your life?
I think one of the guests that I really enjoy is probably also the first really different guest we had because a man. We have the DEI expert Matthew Anderson, and I just one of the things that I love about our conversation with him is one, the recognition of how companies, how society really has looked differently at people of color in general, at women, and the fact that he had to take that own personal journey himself to realize, wait a minute, how did I not notice this before? And so he took some drastic steps of his own to kind of prove the point to himself and to others. So I like that. I like that here's a person who the world, let's face it, white male is made for, right? That's who the world is for. And he is trying to do his part. We're not telling everybody on the planet to change the whole world, but do your little part. And he's doing his part, and he's doing his part in a phenomenal manner in trying to push diversity, equity, and inclusiveness forward in a positive direction. And so that one is really one that really hit me. I really like that. I like
Matthew,
to love them all.
yeah, and it's funny because as soon as you said that, I had already forgotten. Oh yeah, we have our first guy on the show this season. So that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
Yeah, Matthew, incredible guest, lots of insights and open to having the difficult conversations that
Yes.
that can be really uncomfortable to navigate and to raise our hand and say, well, why is this and why, how do we change that? And so love talking with Matthew. Gosh, we have so many incredible guests already lined up. We also have something new we're going to do this season, and that's video. We've
Yes.
only recorded audio before, so we've been fine tuning behind the scenes. We have all the bells and whistles of new music, new graphics, and then
We're
you're going to
forced
see
to
us.
look like we care how we look.
And so now, for perhaps the first time, people are going to see your background, which you always record with. It's right there with you. Prince, tell us the story, Reish, behind your background.
My background is just, I love Prince, always have. I will miss him forever. I love his music, his creativity, the phenomenalness that is who this person was, one, if not the absolutely top three guitarists in the world, but I probably would put him at the top. This background is actually a restaurant in Toronto, Canada, where my husband is from. It's Castle Loma, which so when we got married, he had a lot more interest in the wedding than I anticipated a man would. But we didn't get married here, and he told me after the fact that this is where we could have had our reception, so I was a little upset with him. But this is the
So this is to remind your husband.
I'm like, you never made that point clear to me, dear. So this background is the restaurant at Casa Loma. On the other side of the picture of Prince is a picture of the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. So it was interesting. You've got the Queen, and then you've got Prince on either side of either wall. So, but that's, it's fun. It's Casa Loma.
I love it. And and it reminds me, we also get pretty personal on the podcast.
Yes.
So what is, what is one thing that you've shared on the podcast, or what is one challenge that you've encountered that you've had to overcome?
Oh wow. So many to choose from. No, probably the biggest challenge for me is me, I'll be honest. It's I battle with myself on the regular because there's a lot it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about not not things not looking the way I had anticipated them looking, me not necessarily being that huge success that I had originally planned. I am not one of the 5, 6, 7, however many times they switch over their hosts on The View. That was something I really wanted to find my way to. And I tried different avenues, different ways to figure it out. And it wasn't happening. So that's probably been the biggest challenge for me. Early on in my career, I got a lot of yeses that I wasn't anticipating, a lot of yeses when I was preparing myself for the no, and saying, oh, I'm just going to take this interview just because it's going to be really good experience. No way a job's going to actually come out of it. And a job came out of it. Stunned me. So I got a lot of positive feedback early on. And then so when the negative feedback started piling on after I had already been doing it for, over a decade, it didn't make sense to me. And I was like, I don't understand this. My agent dropped me. I just So the disappointments really took a mental toll on me. And I still battle with that even today. I still battle with that because I get these flashes and these images of, well, weren't you supposed to be doing this and weren't you supposed to be doing that? And then you have to say, no, you're supposed to be doing what you're doing right now, because some of the things that I wanted to do would not have allowed me to have the life that I'm having, to be as involved with my kids as I am, and especially having a son who is on the spectrum, who an amazing kid, articulate kid. A lot of people sometimes don't even recognize until they've spent a good amount of time with him that his mind might work a little bit differently, but realizing that I really needed to be on top of things for him at his school, with his teachers, with the team at the school. And I wouldn't have probably been able to do that as well as I feel I have, had I not had that window of space of not necessarily working outside the home. Because let's face it, I wouldn't have been there. Had I been on The View, I'd have been in New York, right? In the city. So I don't, so I travel back and forth between that, now realizing, okay, kids are a little bit older now. They're 12 and 7. I need to go ahead and start doing a little more work for me now, because they're getting into that good place, not necessarily leaving the home per se, but at least creating that work environment in my home, that while I still have the ability to go do what I need to do with them, I can do things that lift up my inner person.
Interesting how these curveballs of life end up at times being our superpowers that, like you said, these are muscles that never would have been flexed, perhaps, had life gone differently. And I can
Mm-hmm.
certainly relate to that in so many ways, including having a special needs teenager myself. And, so many curveballs. It reminds me of, we have an excellent episode with Melanie McNamara coming up. We also talk with Christine McDaniel. And even Christine, who over the course of her life, her young life,
Yep.
has founded and exited more than 20 businesses, and
How
now is
awesome is that?
counseling others on how to do the same. And so, you look at these stories and you realize everyone gets curveballs. They're all a
Mm-hmm.
little different.
Yep.
But
We even
but
have
many.
return guests. Michelle Hutchison comes back and she really does kind of talk about that, listening to that calling, that, wait, I need to level out here. Something is going on and I need to find that balance. And she gets into that a little bit. What is feeding her soul? I love her calm nature of things. She kind of she gets you like, oh, that's right.
I
Zen
know I could
exists.
listen to her. I should listen to her like all day, every day. Even out some of the anxiety and energy that gets going behind the scenes over here.
I know. So it's a lot of fun stuff. It's a lot of fun stuff that I'm looking forward to doing, and debuting our new season with you, and it's great.
Yes, and we're announcing that launch date soon. So keep it here. We will announce it and share that with you in the comments below this video. All right, Reish. So for people who are brand new to the Think Tank of Three podcast, in fact, they're so brand new, they're going to head over right now and subscribe. At the end of this video, we'll put the link up. where should they start? If they are brand new, do you have a favorite episode? Can I ask that question? Do you have a favorite guest? Do you have a starting point? Do you have an episode that you keep going back to? I know sometimes I just go back to that. It's like therapy for me sometimes to hear like, oh gosh, we said some good things. Where do you think people should start?
My gosh, that's
I mean, other than of course the beginning and listen all the way
right.
through. Although
I
Andrea
might
would say, don't go to episode one. We so bad.
Oh my gosh, that's a hard one. I feel like I'm gonna drop the ball on you here for this. Because now I'm like, they're all just flooding my mind.
There's so many good ones, right? Like I
So
think
many
back
good
to
ones.
Jamel Hill. Hers was just phenomenal. Talk about a woman and from my home state of Michigan who
Yes.
just rocking it in life. I mean, when the president himself, former president, calls you out on Twitter and wants you to be fired, you know you're doing something to
You're
get
doing
the
something.
attention from the person, you know, the most powerful person in the world. So that's a great episode.
That's a great episode. You know, Heather Hardy, the boxer,
Oh my
she
gosh. Yeah.
was phenomenal. I, to this day, still use a line that she said in that to my kids. You gotta, you,
Yeah.
you
I
got,
use it too.
you
Oh
do
my
the gotta,
gosh.
you have to do the gotta do's before the wanna do's. That's her
Yep.
line. I love that. And I still use that with my son specifically because, you know, he's Mr. I can always find a way to game even on my phone, even though you know the rule is come home and get started on the homework. And it's like, you got
Oh,
to
I
do the
use it
gotta
even with
do's
Dave.
before you do the wanna do's, man. She was great. Just another one of those fire energy people
Yeah.
who has been through life, right? She's a female boxer, so that's just not that in and of itself is its own battle, but family and moving forward in life and trying to make it work with the boxing and she was a lot of fun too. We've just, you know, it's just so many. I know it sounds like a cop out. I just can't come up with a favorite one, but I really can't because I get a little bit of nugget from each of them in a different way, shape, or form. So, you know, even we had Pam Oliver on, we had, you know, my girlfriend Gina Kim. Gina is one of those who just jumps right in and she's just like, you just got to go do it. And this is how I did it. And she's still parlaying her media career with her production career and all these different areas. There are just so many. We okay. Well, specifically to women, we have we, we have the period pick me up and then the other young woman, the other woman.
Yes, we have the period pick me up with Katie
Liz,
Crick. We have
Lisney, am I getting that name right?
Lizney Tate. Yes, yes.
I mean, we really do have a little bit of everything for everyone. And I just think you can't go wrong wherever you want to start. It's going to lead you to some other wonderful place. We've got another guest who's going to be coming up talking about, listen, there's this whole thing on book bans happening in the country. And she's an advocate for libraries and librarians and trying to explain that, listen, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you stand on. Banning books is not good in any way, shape, or form because you are essentially narrowing the education of people, of their minds, narrowing the ability of individuals to creatively think for themselves and come up with quality answers to really deep dive questions. So
Yes, Kara
I
White was phenomenal.
yes.
So many incredible guests to look forward to. And for those of you who are brand new to the podcast, so many incredible guests for you to look back on.
That's
So
right.
you can jump over right now and start listening to the Think Tank of Three podcast. We're on all podcasting platforms, coming soon to YouTube with our brand new launch of our new season. And we will be announcing that date soon. Reish, it has been awesome having you on the show. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us a sneak peek and talking behind the scenes about Prince in the background there. I can't wait to kick off this new season with you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, Jules, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, babe.
That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. Make sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.